Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Howdy all, LAUGHLIN here. Welcome to Talking Heads, a program that's produced by the USA Global TV and Radio Network and the E360 TV Network. I'm here in Houston, Texas, paradise, little P. Weather's just starting to change, and I'm enjoying every moment of it, getting yards and everything done. But today we're on a different day because unfortunately I have to go to a funeral tomorrow, my normal day, but you know, those things happen and we just adjust. I'm very fortunate to have USA Global TV and Radio Network that will accommodate those slight changes. So we're talking about, let me get my slide set up here. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. We're talking about STEM and physical health. STEM and physical health. Well, you know, it's STEM. We talked about this a couple days ago with regard to the STEM, meaning science, technology, engineering, and math as far as the normal world goes. But if we apply some of those same concepts using that acronym S.T.E.M to our health, hopefully that we can do the same thing that STEM does for getting better scientists, engineers, mathematicians, etc. Maybe we can improve our health a little bit. I'm not a doctor, never have been, never been associated with that field, never been in the pharmaceutical industry. However, I fell in love with chemistry a long time ago, back in high school. And it's one of those things that I find it fascinating. I wasn't able to become a chemist because I got an invitation to Vietnam when I got my degree. And by the time I got out of that, it was too late to enter the field. But my wife had breast cancer several years ago, and I had a chance to delve back into the chemistry area looking for how can I find out what can I do about some of these side effects? And my love of chemistry resurrected, and that's what I've been doing ever since. I researched the human body at the cellular level, chemically speaking. I look for cause and effect relationships. Treat a cause, fix a problem. Treat symptoms, you're just putting a Band-Aid on it. It's never going to fix the cause of the problem. I believe our health and our wellness are our own responsibility. And as always, my presentations on health and wellness are primarily for awareness and education. So let's dive into, we spent the last 2 weeks talking about the stress of stress, toxins, emotions, and memory. So today we're going to pick up the topic of toxins. Now, the definition, according to many sources, is a substance produced by a plant or an animal that is poisonous to humans. Well, I think that's a pretty narrow range, plant or animal. I think there's a lot of things out there that are poisonous to humans that people will describe as toxic. In fact, we use that word toxic for more than just toxins. And so we'll kind of cover some. But I figured today as an intro, let's look at what are some of the toxins that were around. Now, in most cases, I found that the toxins are, to use a long word, the big word, ubiquitous. They're everywhere. No matter where you look, no matter what you do, you're probably going to bump into, smell, touch, absorb, eat, ingest, drink something that has a toxin in it. It's just that's the way our world is around here now. Hundreds of years ago, there was probably some, but nothing like we have today. And you look at certain areas, there are more restrictions on toxins in some states than others, in other countries, etc. But we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through. But I'm going to look at what are the most common. I did a pretty high level view of this thing. I said, what are the top three in various areas? And we're going to look at what they are, how they affect your health, what controls you have over them. But let's just get started on toxins and what we need to know about. When I look at stuff that's in the air primarily, there's one of the things they call particulate matter. These are particles that actually hang in the air. You see them, you're driving down the street and you see exhaust coming out of a truck. You can see smog in the morning. Now, sometimes that's humidity, but sometimes it's mixed in with smoke and other things. But these particles hanging in the air, they come from motor vehicles, industries, construction, sometimes fires, and they have different categories. One of the categories is what they call PM, particulate matter 2.5, meaning the actual particle size is less than 2.5 micrometers. And then the PM10, less than 10 micrometers. To give you an idea of the size, human hair generally is around 50 to 80, but depending on the hair itself, the color, the individual hair strands can be between 20 to 180 micrometers in thickness. So if you look at something like a hair and you hold it up there and you see that's as thin a hair as I can possibly find, that's probably 10, 20 times bigger than 10 times bigger anyway than the particulate matter that not only is thin, but it's thin all the way around, and it's very, very difficult to see any single one of them. But you can see them when they settle on things, becomes dust. Why is it an issue? Because it can penetrate deep into our lungs and actually enter our bloodstream. We're breathing the stuff in and it goes right straight into us. Not much we can do about it without wearing a mask. So if we're in industries that have a high amount of particulate matter, we have masks that help us avoid it. Another airborne toxin, nitrogen dioxide. Basically, it's a toxic gas that comes from car exhaust. You see it coming from power plants, from various industries. And this nitrogen dioxide, NO2, increases our ground level ozone. And you start seeing more and more of it as it accumulates. But because it's something that we can breathe, we end up with in respiratory or other kinds of infections in our bodies and it's not just a single case. You might have a single person visiting LA after a day, they're all sorts of choked up and everything. But if you're living in this over time, a long-term exposure can cause some serious respiratory or infections. Ozone, we hear this all the time, smog. This is a low-level smog that's caused by sunlight when it mixes with nitrogen oxides and other what they call VOCs, volatile organic compounds, depending on what is in your neighborhood. And as a result, again, we're breathing it in, respiratory issues, lung function, and these are generally more found in the urban areas where industry is at, a lot of freeways, a lot of highways going through everything. That's where you're going to come up with a lot of this kind of stuff. Lead, we're talking about heavy metals now. There are so many different kinds of metals out there that create a problem. Lead is one that we hear all the time. Back when I was a kid, I guess lead was used on baby cribs, and the kids would chew on the edge of the bassinet or whatever they were in. And that became a big issue back when I was very young. And they had to get rid of all the leaded paint that was going into those kinds of things. But lead is still used in paints. We find it in contaminated soils, water pipes. A lot of industries use it. Ceramics use it. Toy industries use it. Cosmetics. A lot of industries use lead. And it's an accumulation over time. If you're only putting on a particular type of cosmetic, once a week, maybe not a big deal. You put it on every day, it might be a big deal. You're putting on every day, year after year after year, yeah, that's a big deal. Mercury, I think most of us are pretty familiar with that. I remember in high school, we had the bowl of mercury, and we put our dimes in there and make them very, very shiny. And we'd sit there and pour it in our hands. And the science teachers never thought anything of it being a toxin. But we see it nowadays in a lot of fish that's out there. They say beware of tuna or any other kind of fish out there that has mercury, because the mercury has gone into the oceans and fish consume it, and that's where we get it. But it's also a product of an industry, power plants. It's a neurotoxin. It goes straight into our bodies and straight into our brain. A lot of issues there, particularly important for children. A lot of cognitive effects in adults over time. Arsenic is another heavy metal. It's a poison. It's naturally occurring, but it's also being used in certain industries, particularly rice. It's used in treated wood. Arsenic is used in a lot of things. We see because of the use of it, people handle this all the time. You usually end up with skin lesions, cardiovascular disease, risk increases, diabetes, cancers, your skin cancer, lung, bladder, kidney, all have these kinds of reactions to arsenic. So the toxins that I've listed so far pretty much don't come from plants or animals. They come from power plants and uh, smog and everything else. So, we think of toxins being plants or animals, but I think that we really should think that toxins are toxic no matter what they are. So we start opening that window for toxins and we start looking at what else is out there. Now, we have over 1,000 approved toxins for our cosmetics and food industries. Yet Europe has hardly any at all. I mean, you're talking about a dozen or two or three, maybe at most. They've canceled out hundreds of toxins that the United States uses. We just don't see them in Europe. The same product made by Kellogg's or any other company that manufactures a product in Europe and a product in the United States, labels are identical except for the ingredients. This one will have 5 ingredients. This one will have 15 or 25. And that's the difference in the two. California has some very strict rules on what carcinogens can you add to things. We have a lot of things we use that are known carcinogens, yet they still go in products. When I buy ice cream, one of the things I look for is carrageenan. I will not buy anything with that in it. It's just one of those things that I look at labels and I get very leery. I pick up a label and it's got 25 products in it. I know I'm going to find something in there that is something I don't want. Let's talk about pesticides. You spray something on your foods, the crops in order to get things. Well, yeah, it kills a lot of bugs. It destroys their nervous system. In some cases, it destroys their reproductive system. I was fortunate, if I can use that word, to have German cockroach invasion prior to COVID. And no matter what I did, I couldn't get rid of it. I finally had to go onto YouTube and find out how do you get rid of it? Well, it turned out I needed 4 different chemicals in order to control that particular cockroach because of the nature of the system. I had to not only destroy the bug itself, but its reproductive cycle, its eggs and everything. And it took about 6 months, boom, gone. Never seen another one since. But organophosphates do a very good job of that particular function of killing bugs. But humans are also affected because of our exposure to it. If it's wind blown, we can pick it up. If it's something that's still fairly new, we touch it. The foods we eat and these things, because it destroys the nervous system in bugs, it's going to cause neurological issues, developmental delays if it were kids, and maybe some cognitive issues in adults. Glyphosate, Roundup. We see commercials on TV all the time for this. Please sign up here if you have this or this or this or this, and a lot of different issues, primarily dealing with, I think, was it Parkinson's is one more, but anyway, a lot of issues with glyphosate. My wife worked as a paralegal back in the 80s when and it was amazing. The big case, 1,000 people on the case, and they've known this for years, for decades, yet we still produce it, we still sell it, and they're still settling lawsuits over it. But it's a herbicide. It's used in manufacturing. You can go out and buy it today, Roundup. It's available at your local box store. Home gardeners have it. And again, it's a very dangerous one. It's definitely a carcinogen. It's an endocrine disruptor. Any reproductive cycles that you have, it's going to create a problem. Pyrethroids, synthetic natural pyrethrins. They're commonly found in insecticides, but they're also found in pet shampoos, something you think we would never put on ourselves, we put on our pets. But they're neurotoxic. They get into our nervous system. We have skin issues, breathing issues, respiratory issues. But it can also cause reproductive problems, cancers, thyroid issues, our immune system dysfunction, developmental problems. These things are major, major problems for our health. We get exposed to them, we handle them, we breathe them, we touch stuff that's been with them. There's just many ways that these toxins can increase our health hazards. Again, anytime you're dealing with something like that, wear gloves, let the stuff dry. It's just so many, read the labels and protect yourself. What about stuff that's not a plant or an animal? Noise pollution. We hear about pollution. Well, if the pollution is strong enough and long enough, it will create health problems. It's poisonous to the body in that sense. So I talk about noise pollution coming from traffic, highways, and anybody who's ever lived nearby them knows exactly what I'm talking about. You see a lot of brick fences going up 8, 10, 12 feet to separate a neighborhood just from a local 2-lane, 4-lane road that's running by them. It becomes more the norm to cut down on that noise pollution. But a lot of urban streets, you hear the noise, horns, dogs barking, sirens, tire friction on the roads, airplanes, almost impossible to avoid in any kind of urban situation or even the suburban areas. Over time, again, a time issue, how much are you exposed to it? May not be a big deal at first, but it's going to increase your stress level. And when that stress level starts going up, it's going to interrupt your sleep. So prolonged exposure can be a serious health issue. Industrial noise, we're in an environment where we're working, the machinery is making noise, construction industry, you hear them around here every so often with roofs being repaired, that constant hammering. The noise in and of itself is not a problem on a single day basis unless it's a very loud noise and repetitive, but over time it's an issue. Hearing loss, sleep issues, mental health issues, a lot of problems can come from that industrial noise. I flew for 16 years in the military. I have hearing loss. Now, part of that hearing loss is even though I wore earplugs when I was inside the aircraft, I didn't wear the earplugs because I was inside the aircraft. But again, you walk to certain parts of the aircraft. I could not have a conversation with somebody 2 feet away from me. I would have to increase my voice. I moved down another 6 feet and I could have almost a normal conversation. So it's those subtle things that we don't think about that we're exposed to year after year after year. Again, more miscellaneous. Airport noise, takeoffs, landings, engine noise, those things can be pretty loud. I can remember some takeoffs, some of the loudest aircraft I've ever heard were in Utapao, Thailand, not SR-71, U-2. In fact, it took off when I was working in California. The airport was 7 miles from me, and I could actually hear the U-2s taking off. Very, very loud engines on it. Same thing with the early 707s. But anytime you have to raise your voice to talk to anybody, regardless of where you're at, you're going to have noise, whether you realize it or not. It's a problem. If it's going to be an environment that you're living, working in, wear earplugs. Now, I have a problem at home. I can't hear, so I turn the TV up. My wife hears it too loud. I'm sure I'm probably impacting her hearing. But when you start having noise issues, trouble communicating, sleeping issues, over time, hypertension, raise your blood pressure, increases your risk of cardiovascular disease. Now, is that a poison? Yeah, it's harmful to the body. What about abusive relationships? You have physical trauma, emotional, psychological, sexual, financial. It's all about control. Abusive relationships, sometimes they don't start out that way, but over time they evolve, and one person controls another person far beyond that level that two people should. You end up with a lot of issues. PTSD can relate from that. Physical injuries, chronic pain, substance abuse. A lot of things come forth from that kind of environment. Are they a toxin? No. Are they toxic? Yes. Is it something you can control? Hopefully, yes. Codependent relationships. Here's another big one. This is where one person relies excessively on another. And when you start having that, you sort of lose your identity. Everything goes to that other person. Your self-worth, your identity, your emotional validation. A lot of issues start to develop with these codependent relationships. Sometimes this develops out of a parent and a kid with a child with, not child, it could be a young adult that has drug issues or some other addiction to something, gambling, whatever it may happen to be. There are things in there, but what you end up seeing is enabling or neglecting a lot of guilt issues, anxiety, inadequacy. Mental disorders lead to depression, chronic health issues over time. Never a good place to be. And I plan on getting into most of these things and saying, how can we minimize it, mitigate it, get rid of it? But right now, this is just an introductory. What's out there that's toxic to us? Another one of these toxic issues are what they call unsupportive toxic relationships, jealousy, manipulation, competition. Now, friendly competition is good, but competition can turn ugly in a hurry. It's one of those things they call emotional vampirism. But it's a constant or continual drain of your emotional energy. You say, I don't want to go there, but you go there and you feel drained by the time you leave. It's almost impossible to get away from whatever that particular situation is. It erodes your self-esteem. It fosters negativity. It hinders your personal growth. It does nothing good for you. It increases your stress, anxiety, depression. And over time, you find yourself more lonely and isolated. Again, choose your friends wisely because they're the ones that help you get through those bad times in your life. Okay, let's talk a little bit about dietary issues. Those are the things that probably most people think about when they think about toxins. I think about toxins, first thing I come to is diet and personal care products, cosmetics and things like that. That's what I think of first. Secondly, I think about, lead and air and other kinds of pollutants. But when I think about dietary toxins, there are thousands of them. There's an unbelievable number. One of the top three are trans fats. These are your unsaturated fats that have been hydrogenated. We've added extra hydrogen to them. And in the process of doing that, the actual oil fat becomes a solid at room temperature. And when they do that, it increases the shelf life. I can store it for a long time without it becoming rancid. We see this in a lot of processed foods, fried and baked, margarine, snacks. A lot of things that we want and use and love have some level of trans fats in it, but they have to be labeled on the label of the product. But if they're less than 0.5%, they don't have to be labeled. So there may be some in there and you never know about it. But you see increased risks of heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and other kinds of ailments because of these trans fats. Added sugars. And sugar has probably 3 or 4 dozen different names. Just because it doesn't actually say sugar doesn't mean it's not in there. When you look at the label, it goes by percentages of whatever they happen to have in there. If the greatest percentage is water, that's going to be the first one. The next greatest percentage on down. And they may have sugar here, sugar here, sugar here, sugar. There may be 4 different kinds of sugars. But sugar in the processing of food, the preparation of food, in drinks and baked goods, lots and lots in desserts and cereals and sauces. It makes things taste good. But again, excessive amounts over time can lead to many diseases. Is a donut bad for you at one time? No. Is a donut bad for you 3 times a day? Is it bad for you 3 times a day every week, for the next 2 years? Maybe start having a problem. Again, it's how much and how long do you have it? Highly processed foods. This is 1976. They went back and did major studies and said, when we came out with our really highly processed foods, we started additives, preservatives, flavorings, all sorts of stuff, salt, sugars, unhealthy fats, artificial this, artificial that. They decided that was the absolute #1 cause of obesity. And we've seen that in just about every country in the world. When the standard American diet gets imported to some other place in the world, India, for example. Before that, they had coconut oil, not a problem. You start adding in all these other things with the packaged goods. If it's in a package, a can, or a jar, chances are there's something in there that's preserving it, making it look good, making it taste good, making the texture in your mouth just so unctuous you need seconds and thirds and fourths. Anyway, so let's talk briefly about, we got enough time for that. Personal care products, parabens, lots of them. It's a synthetic preservative, but they're known hormone disruptors. It mimics estrogen, creates a lot of problems in reproductive systems, but personal care products, your shampoos, your underarm deodorants, stuff you put on your bodies. 20 years ago, a problem. Nowadays, with the nanotechnology, it goes straight right through the skin, right into the bloodstream. Phthalates. I used to think that was a neat word because of the pH, TH start to it. But phthalates soften and make things more pliable, more flexible, but they're also known hormone disruptors. Formaldehyde's a preservative. It's a known carcinogen. A lot of respiratory and allergic reactions with it. Let's jump into the cosmetic industry. Heavy metals, we talked about that a little bit earlier. Your lead, your mercury, your arsenic, cadmium, chromium, they all accumulate in the body over time. Can't get rid of them easily. Become serious health risks. They have these things called coal tar dyes. P, phenylenediamine, and other labels, CI with 5 digits. These are, in most cases, carcinogens, but they haven't tested every single one of them. A lot of problems with them. They have a formaldehyde releasing preservatives. It extends the shelf life of items, prevents bacterial growth. They're also known carcinogens. And our cleaning products, chlorine, ammonia, and phthalates. With that, I'm going to leave everything there. We'll come back, just absolutely close this part out and start with the next section. So with that, join me next week, regular time. And again, please take a look at us on the USA Global TV and Radio Network and on the E360 TV network. Take care. Have a wonderful time. Bye now.